Hello and welcome back to The Cable Climb. I'm Brady Volpe, and today we're joined by someone deeply embedded in the heart of broadband innovation, Mike Collins, product manager at VeEX Inc. Mike spent nearly 40 years helping turn complex network challenges into actionable solutions, serving cable operators with cutting-edge test equipment and strategic know-how. From his early days in the industry to shaping the future of broadband diagnostics, Mike brings a rare blend of hands-on technical chops and product leadership to the table. Mike, welcome to The Cable Climb.
Thanks, Brady. First off, long-time watcher, first-time viewer. Or visitor, first-time visitor. That's what I meant to say.
Good to have you on the show, Mike. You and I have known each other for more than 20 years, actually. I was thinking about that this morning. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And I'd like to jump right into your background, your origin story, to discuss how developing test equipment that really new technicians out in the industry are using today. So you have a really rich understanding of that. And I think I'd like this discussion to be how you got into your career as a technician, first of all, and then how you've gone into the point to where now you're developing that test equipment that technicians are using. So what first drew you into the cable industry?
Well, funny, I was out of work and I was heading to an interview to sell uniforms, Cintas, something like that, and just recently bought a house, my wife and I, and had cable installed. So as I was driving to the interview, I saw Telsat Cable. I saw the facility that they had, a little small office building. So I pulled in and put in an application, and a week later they called me up. So I actually started with them doing aerial inspection. I was an aerial inspector, going out doing pole measurements, identifying poles, and then setting up Exhibit A's for construction, because it was a fairly new system. We were Telsat Cable at the time, and this was the mid to late 80s, was one of the very first cable operators to overbuild an existing cable system.
What kind of training did they provide, or how did you learn the ropes when you started out in your career?
Yeah. So there was a guy that I rode with for about a month. It was really simple stuff. You just go and you measure the poles, and there's markings on the poles. You had to document all that stuff. But I did that for about a month or so, and then I was on my own. Let me say, when I was doing the Exhibit A's, like for the construction, they put me in front of this computer, which, again, this is in the late 80s. There was no mouse. So everything was an Atari ST, 1 meg. Ooh, 1 meg.
It was a cutting-edge computer.
Cutting edge. But it was a program called Easy Draw that I would do all my mapping. I would draw where the poles were, put the pole numbers, do everything for an Exhibit A that I would submit to the county, or the company would submit to the county to get permission to put cable up on the poles. So I got to learn a lot about, working with computers. In fact, working on that computer was kind of cool, because that was when all of a sudden we had a mouse. There was this device that you could connect to this computer and actually move the cursor on the screen with a mouse.
It was revolutionary.
Wow, this is great. It makes it a lot easier than using the left and right arrows, moving the cursor around. So it was pretty cool. Did a lot of drawings on that. Got a lot of experience working with that. But from there, they were starting to build these MDUs, starting to build other systems throughout the plant, the county. And so I got to work with the teams to go out and do site surveys for, satellite placement, so where we can figure out where's the best place to put a standalone head end for these apartment complexes. And did that, help them build the head ends, wire the head ends, build the dishes, the satellite dishes, the 5 meters, and did all that. So got pretty technical with that. And then they offered me a gig to be a service technician. So I started doing service techs, and then I rode around with some techs. In fact, the first guy I rode around with was a guy named Dave Cook. He was a maintenance tech, and we rode around together for a couple months, and he showed me the ropes, and it didn't take too much, but got out there. I was doing, basically a service tech back in those days was from the home all the way to the head end. So if you go to a house and you got a problem, we didn't do the installs. We had contract installs.
Right.
So we would go to the house if there was ever a service call, and you could trace it back to the tap. And if the tap had it, you traced it back to the amp. If the amp had it, you go all the way to the head end. And if you had a channel down, you go in the head end, you fix the channel, or an LMB go out on a satellite dish. You change the LMB out on the satellite dish. So it was, an all-inclusive technician job at that time.
Do you remember what test equipment you were using at that time?
Yeah, I had a Sadelco. Can't remember the model number, but it was a Sadelco with a dial that you had to tune into your frequency. I think I had a Tektronix TDR, big blue monster, and we used that for locating drops, stuff like that. But yeah, it was a Sadelco. Then we moved up to, I think my first real good meter was the SAM Junior, and then the SAM 3, and then that was ended up being the SAM 3 was when I ended up with when I was a maintenance tech a couple years later. But so yeah, it basically evolved from that. Did service calls, and then got an opening to be a maintenance tech for South Orange County, which is I was in Orlando. This is where I was working.
Now that's a pretty big promotion to get to the maintenance tech. And you said that you started riding around with Dave Cook. So how did that relationship form? Because getting into that maintenance tech role had to be pretty critical for you. Yeah.
So the thing with this company, Telsat, when I started with them, we had less than 5,000 subscribers. So it was a startup cable system.
Right.
And I got in at the ground floor. I was Tech 22. I was a 22nd technician, field person with this company. And they went through, attrition, lost a few here and there. But so it was a really tight camaraderie of people there. We worked with, the people you worked with, we had parties afterwards. And so we all got to know each other. We were very good friends. And Dave Cook was one of the guys that, he was a tech that talked to tech ops manager, a guy named Dave Job, saying, "Hey, we should get Mike in. He knows what he's doing out there as a service tech. Let's get him. Or at the time, the head end guy, because I was building the head ends. Let's get him as a service tech." So I rode with Dave, and then a couple other guys that I rode around with. But Dave was primarily the one guy I rode with. But yeah,
So forming that relationship with a maintenance tech, Dave, was instrumental for you getting your job as a maintenance tech.
Yeah, Dave and the tech ops manager, because we were all friends as a group in Telsat, because we had parties when we hit 5,000 subscribers. We had a 5,000 subscriber party, and I still remember the very first day of being solo as a maintenance tech or as a service tech, and one of the guys told me, it wasn't Dave, I think it was a guy named Chris Brown. He said, "There's 3 things you got to know if you want to keep a cable plant running. It's 3 things only. You got to have RF, you got to have AC, and you got to have DC. You figure out and make sure all 3 of those objects are working. You can clear 99% of your problems in the field." And that stuck. And doing those methodologies and those testings. When dealing with problems, you got to make sure you got all 3.
Now,
steps of.
Do you think those three things still hold true today when we're dealing with DOCSIS 3.1 and DOCSIS 4.0 in our networks?
Yeah, I trained that, but there's a 4th now. Because you got fiber, you got to have light, so you got to have RF, AC, DC, and light. And now you can go into depths on what is good light, what is bad light. What is good RF? What is bad RF? Is it flashing on and off? Is it low? Is it high? But you still got to maintain those 3 things when you're on an outage situation. Those are the 3 things you look for. But now it's the 4 things you look for. You got to make sure: do I have light to get the node up?
Right.
And then if you got light, do I have RF? If I have RF, do I have DC? No, I don't have DC. Do you have AC? Yes, I got AC. Change your DC power pack.
Yeah, I like that. I've not heard that before, but that's a really nice baseline fundamentals as a maintenance tech. All right, so now you're a maintenance tech. Where did you go from there?
Well, did that till I had an opportunity to work with a contracting company doing design work. So I left the cable world. This is like in 98. So I was about 8 or 9 years into that, and got a job. And it was actually the person that hired me in construction as an aerial inspector, Betsy Becker. She had a contract company called Worldwide Fiber Optics, and I went in as a CAD guy. I was doing redesigns, and they had a couple guys there that were teaching me the ropes on how to use AutoCAD and then MicroStation and stuff like that. And we did a lot of redesigns for cable systems that were going from a 60 volt to a 90 volt.
Right.
So we would take an existing plant and relocate the power supplies to accommodate a 90 volt system compared to a 60 volt system. So it started off as that, and then I was a bad guy, so I got buddies with Dave Cook and got him to leave the cable system and join us at Worldwide Fiber Optics. So he came and worked with us, and him and I were kind of like a partner out in the field. We would go out and not only, we had contracts where we would go to like schools and run fiber optics for the schools. So the company, set up all these little gigs that were out and about. And Dave and I did one school where we ran all fiber optics, so all the classrooms, just a very low grade, I think it was just a 1310 setup. We did that. And then we also got one really cool gig where we went and we had a contract with the Kennedy Space Center, and we put Yagi antennas up throughout the whole Kennedy Space Center out in Cocoa Beach. And
that had to be fun and interesting, the things that you saw at the Kennedy Space Center.
Dude, it was fantastic. So we installed Yagi antennas throughout the area, and they were using them for, at the time they had these barcode readers that they would scan everything on the system, in the plant or in the area, anything. And these Yagi antennas were strategically placed throughout the network, that these wands that they used to read the barcodes could be seen by the Yagis and then go to a system so they could do all their scans on all the items. But yeah, Dave and I worked on launch pad A and B, and we got to do the VAB building, the big, huge building that's out there at Kennedy Space Center. You can go up to the top of it, and I'm not afraid of heights, but boy, it was high up there. It was kind of funky, but it was fun.
All right. So after NASA, where did you go from there?
Yeah. After NASA, then an opportunity again happened up in Atlanta in 1998, 99. El Nino came through and kind of wiped out a lot of the area and the cable systems and houses and stuff with tornadoes, and so they had this contractor that was doing redesigns and rebuilds for MediaOne at the time in Atlanta. And they hired me up there to do to run a splicing crew, to go out and put all new taps and amps on the run, and did that for about 6-8 months until we landed another contract to do the proofs on these nodes. So we would go out and we would sweep them and verify them for VoIP. So we would sweep all these amps, get all the end of lines, verify that we can forward and return and verify that we can actually get a modem online and get a VoIP, a dial-up. So we did all these, it's like a proof of performance in a way. We had to submit all these books on all these nodes. So did that till about 2000, and that's when AT&T Broadband bought MediaOne. Yep. And they said, okay, no more contracting. So that's when
out of that.
What
equipment were you using for the proof testing?
Oh, the 8591C.
Okay.
Yeah, doing that.
Agilent's 8591C spectrum analyzer.
Yeah, going up in buckets with a extension cord because it didn't have a battery in it.
Yeah.
We didn't have the inverter in the bucket, at least the bucket that I had. But yeah, we used that, and I think we were even using the WaveTech sweep gear because we had to get a sweep response for both forward and return as we were doing this, as well as levels and stuff like that. So it was a whole setup. But
so now you're in Atlanta. You're out of a job.
Yeah, I'm out of a job.
So what comes next?
Well, I ended up having an interview with Huck Engineering.
Yeah.
And at that time, Huck was also in the midst of being purchased by Sunrise Telecom. And they were looking for a guy to do technical support for their meter. At that time, it was the CM1000 that just came out.
Yeah,
cable modem in it.
I mean, can you explain for everyone Huck Engineering and really the CM1000? Because that was a revolutionary product at the time when it came out.
So, and that's I don't know if you can see it right there.
I think it's just off screen, but
right there, just right there.
that meter that you're pointing at there is the original CM1000.
That's actually CM1000 serial number 0001.
Nice.
So I got to keep that one because once we did all the transition, I was in charge of tech support on them, so I had to have all the meters and models. But it was a meter that we came up with that had a built-in cable modem.
The first of its kind.
First of its kind, and we were, and it was. It's kind of weird because it was an analog meter. No, it was a digital meter. That's what it was. It was all digital, and we had a problem with getting figuring out how to do analog with a cable modem digital tuner.
Yep. Because DOCSIS was new. DOCSIS was brand new at that time.
This is DOCSIS 1.0. Yeah, this is 1.0. And so, we started with that, and then we evolved from that. We eventually got analog where we can get the audio and the video, and then we got it to where we could do full channel searches and scans and stuff. And then we went to DOCSIS 1.1, and then we came out with the CM2000, which was DOCSIS 2.0.
So how do you think your background as a cable technician helped you understand and kind of bridge the gap as someone who's developing these test meters that are really brand new to the industry at the time, to make them so that the technician could understand how to use them? Because we really had to bridge that gap. Brand new technology coming out, but still the tech has to understand how to use it.
So it's funny you say that, because when I first started with these meters, it had a whole bunch of stuff that was, and I can't even tell you what it was, but there was so much information and data that was on the UI screen for the technician to try to absorb. And I was an ex-tech, right? I'm a guy that came from the field, and I'm looking at this, and I was working with the guys that wrote the GUI, the guys that wrote the software and the hardware. We were all in one big group. And it's like, man, you really don't need to show this. Just give us the basics of where's just the MER pre and post. And then if they want to go deeper, they could hit another button and go into that. But tone it down some to where you can at least make it more understandable for a technician to look at and visually see something there. We added the bar. And so instead of it being a number, you had a number, but then you had a bar that showed the power level. And then that bar, you could put a spec in it, that if that bar ended up going into that spec, it would be red or blue, depending on if it was in or out of spec. So we started doing the colors of making it, pass or fail.
Yep. Keep it simple.
Yeah. And working with the modems, I was fortunate enough to, having my background with doing the computer drawings and just understanding computers from when it was just command line interface, Windows 3.1 to Windows, 95 that gave you a GUI and stuff like that. Understanding that, I got to work with the guys that, built the CMTSs that we tested on. And then when I was taking calls and would get a customer having a problem and I needed to simulate what that customer was doing, I was then the guy that worked on the CMTSs to configure them to match the configuration that they had, so that I could break the meter in my office, in my lab, and then give that to the engineers, and they fix the software.
Right.
So
you had to reproduce the issues that the technicians are seeing in your lab.
Yeah. And it's hard to do in a lab without actually going out into the field. But after working with it for the time that I had, I understood what to do and was able to duplicate a lot of the scenarios and situations that were happening in the field. And it was constantly changing because DOCSIS was constantly growing and evolving in different configurations for different systems. So you had to be able to support all the different configurations. And
now, has that ever worked in the reverse, where you were replicating a scenario in your lab that you saw at a cable operator, and maybe you found a configuration that you could help the cable operator optimize?
Sometimes, yeah. Or a lot of times I would work with the cable operator, and they would send me their running config, and then I would look through and say, hey, you could actually do this to help improve your upstream, And one of your friends and buddies that you work with a lot here, John Downey, used to help me a lot when I first started at Huck. Yeah. He was at Cisco, and he taught me a lot about how to how to optimize the return settings on a CMTS to have a better performing modem in the field. So, in fact, I still got a lot of his documentation that I fall back on and look through.
We all do, I think, some of John's or Ron's documentation that we use. So, I mean, speaking of mentors and stuff earlier, but are there other, like, what do you recommend to people as far as, like, how do you find mentors, or how do you identify people that can help you, people like John or Dave Job, Dave Cook, things like that can, what's been your strategy to identify mentors that have helped you move up in your career?
Well, I would think it's very basic. It's, once you get to know somebody and then they help you figure out things, or you can go to them and ask questions. And dude, I don't want to blow anybody's head up, but there was another guy that I used a lot that really helped me out a lot. Some guy named Brady Volpe, something like that. Can't think of what he is, but he's, you, and I'll go right to the point. You were a big mentor as well, because we did a lot of stuff together as far as making, scenarios for that customers had, and even SCTE shows, setting up stuff like that. But
for the audience, you and I worked together for a while, so we actually have a lot of good stories to collaborate together.
Yeah. But finding a good mentor, it's just somebody that you respect. Once you're in the business and once you work with them. Like I said, it's a camaraderie. You get to make a friendship, a camaraderie with another person that's in the industry. You'll do anything to help them. They'll do anything to help you. Yep. And there's people, so many people I worked with in Orlando that I still am good friends with, and they've gone off into other parts of the industry. Kind of like me, I got into the test equipment side and started getting involved with making test equipment, utilizing the user interface of the product. And there's other guys that went straight into the fiber side. There's other guys that went into sales, but they're still in the CATV business. It's kind of like a disease, man. You can't get rid of it. You could try to leave, but you're going to come right back.
Yeah, I think I think the important thing is keep these type of friendships and relationships strong, because I think you and I know frequently how often we'll reach out to each other and say, "Hey, I have a question. Do you have the answer for it? Have you seen this issue before?"
That's exactly it. Hey, have you seen this? Have you ever heard of this? Yeah.
And having those contacts is just incredibly important, and so keep those relationships. Build the relationships, keep the relationships strong.
Yeah. But,
all right, so you're with Sunrise. What happens after Sunrise then?
I think 2013 VeEX purchased Sunrise, and they made me a product manager and said, "Hey, help us out." Or not really, they didn't have to help them. They had a pretty good setup, but continue our product with what as a technician. Because when I was with Sunrise, I wasn't a PM. I was a technical support guy. I knew all the products. I knew everything about it. But once I got to VeEX, that's when I was able to get in and actually do the things I wanted to do instead of suggesting things that I thought should be done. So now I have the opportunity to work on the meters, make changes. And it's kind of like I'm an artist now. They say it's a blank canvas. You can do whatever you want. Make it work. Make it look good. And I know you're probably going to get a lot of hate mail because there's some people that just don't want the way it looks. So.
Be a better artist, Mike.
yeah, be a better artist. And it's working with a bunch of other folks. I'm not saying I'm the only one that does it, but it's a look and feel we try to have at VeEX of keeping everything the same. Same look and feel, so that when you go from the fiber meters to the Ethernet meters to the Wi-Fi meters to the broadband meters, it all has to have this, similar, appearance. But so I got to work with the AT2500 to the redesign that it's now the AT3G. We're up, the maintenance meter, the 380C. We got to work on that a lot and work on the tuning of that. CX310 install meter, which was, it's always evolving, always, being modified and updated. And now that we're going into 4.0, we're looking at, what's our next step?
So you've seen a lot of different meters, a lot of different equipment throughout your career.
Yeah.
As you think about the history, the evolution of the meters that you worked with, from when you started as a technician to some of the new advanced meters that the new platforms that VeEX is working on, what is your perspective on the industry's evolution and the evolving needs that we need as an evolution? Do you think there's gaps, or do you think we're keeping up?
Well, we're keeping up. It's hard to say, or it's hard to maintain the technology, because it's ever changing, or it's ever growing. You could add something, and then it's like, well, that was good 6 months ago, and like right now it's not ready yet. But a lot of times, I'm kind of probably jump off here, but working with this company, I'm able to work with the technology before it even gets introduced to the networks.
Right.
Like with OFDMs and stuff, we're working with OFDMs and had it down pretty good before they even started introducing it out in the field. So, but to answer your question, I think we're keeping up. I think we're doing a good job at it. All vendors, I'm not going to speak just for my company, but all the companies out there that make test equipment, it's constantly evolving, and I'm pretty satisfied with what's going on. I know there could be more, but we just have to wait till it gets out and about, because it's not introduced out into the field yet. A lot of the stuff that's being talked about, a lot of stuff is being talked about that hasn't been introduced to the market yet. Then once it gets into the market, then that's when we'll have to really, dig in deep.
So our technology is continuously evolving, and you're talking about DOCSIS 4.0, PON, that everyone has to stay up with, keep up to date with. You're saying you're even seeing things before they come out. How do you personally keep up to speed with all the technology evolution that's continuously going? And more importantly, how would you recommend that today's technicians stay up to speed with all the technology advancements we have in our industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's kind of a difficult one to answer, but to stay on it is, SCTE, do all the trainings that they provide, go to the shows, get to know all go to the vendors, talk to the vendors, see what they have to offer, see what they say is, I don't want to say see what they say you should do, because we should be doing what you say for us to do. But again, we all are in the same business. We all are seeing the same things out there. Just participate in all the cable activities that are out there. Schooling, obviously, if you can get any kind of training. I'm not sure. NTCI is what I was using back in the day. I think they're now somebody else. I'm not quite sure. I haven't been keeping up with that. But it's very similar to the SCTE,
Yes.
Classes.
There's at least two major training partners out there that you get training with.
Yeah. Get all that, and then attend like I said, the SCTE vendor days or shows or events.
The local chapters,
local chapters, yeah.
All right. My final question for you, Mike.
Good boy.
Looking back at your career, what advice would you give to technicians or engineers or anyone in the cable industry that want to, basically want to upscale or grow, bridge a gap in their technical experience, and maybe get into product management, what you're doing?
Yeah. I would say don't be afraid to take on challenges, even if it sounds like it's way above your head and it sounds so complicated. Once you start to work on something and understand it, even at a basic level, you tend to get more comfortable. And obviously, you got to be comfortable with it, and then you evolve with it. So, and that was something that I could say you taught me, was once you get on, don't be afraid to take the challenge on. If you got something that, oh my gosh, I don't want to mess with that. That's beyond me. I want to stick with what I'm on. I'm would be narrow-minded here. Can't do that. Take on anything and everything, and try to figure out all aspects of what you're working on. And that was what I did. So I was not afraid to take on a challenge. I had a lot of fails, but that made me stronger and understand when you fail on something or you break it or you can't fix it and somebody helps you fix it. Now you know how to fix it. Now you understand why it did what it did. And then, unfortunately, when you're starting to get, and I ain't saying I'm old, but you start, if I don't do it again in a couple more years, I'm going to forget some of the things. Heck, I probably forgot more than
It's happening to all of us.
Man, it's nuts. But, I got my bench behind me. I got all my setups here. So I constantly work on stuff and look at other ways of looking at measurements and stuff. So just don't be afraid to take on a challenge. Don't be afraid to, just don't be afraid. Just take it on. And if you can't do it, at least you tried. But, a lot of the things that you try, you'll succeed at. And then once you get a knowledge base, then you can just, move on up. And, I'm not going to say I'm a, big in the industry. I've made my little niche and I've figured it out and I'm doing pretty good at it. And
Mike, I think that's such great advice, because I think probably nearly every job that I've ever taken, I've had jittery knees when going into that job, thinking, can I really do this, or do I know everything about it? And the reality is, there's lots you don't know about any job you're going into, but you're going to learn it. You got to figure it out. So you just got to say, you know what? I'm going to go take this job, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. So great advice.
Yeah. Thank you,
Mike. Thank you so much for all the information. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you appreciated Mike's advice. I think he gave us some great advice for everyone. So huge thanks to Mike Collins for giving us an inside look at what it takes to turn broadband challenges into industry solutions. If you enjoyed the conversation, tap and hit that subscribe and bell and let us know. Yeah, right down there. It's not that hard. Know your thoughts or questions for Mike in the comments below, if there's anything he didn't answer. And until next time, keep climbing and keep the plant shining, everyone. So thanks and so long.
Okay,
Thanks.
so Mike, I do have 3 questions. I'm just going to be a watcher at this point.
Okay.
1, who else do you want to give a shout out to as mentors?
Well, there's a couple that I had in Orlando. There's Mike Brock. I think, Brady, you may have worked with Mike Brock. He was a major influencer. Him and Dave Job. Dave Job was the tech ops that ended up going to Scientific Atlanta, and I got to work with him while he was at Scientific Atlanta when I was in Atlanta. And then he ended up going to Cox, and he's just recently retired. So he's now living the good life.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to deal with this. But
Good for him.
Dave and Mike Brock were 2 big guys.
Okay.
And there's a couple guys that I worked with that have passed away, and they were big influencers. Easy for me to say.
Okay. Yeah. So then my other question, this is probably a really, really important one.
Oh, no.
How did you meet me?
Well, I met you in a parking lot.
Exactly. And who would not roll down the window? Me.
Like, again, that guy I was talking about earlier that I had a hard time remembering his name, but yeah.
That's funny.
You came by to either pick him up or drop him off, and I waved at you through the window. And
you're like, roll down the window. And I was like, I don't know you, bye.
yeah. Who's this creep?
Yeah. Okay, so another more serious question. You have some products behind you. Do you want to just show everyone really quickly, what product you work on?
Sure.
Yeah, take a minute.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, take a minute. Do a little show and tell.
Yeah, no problem. So the one that's closest to my head here, this is our CX380C, and it's sitting on top of our portable sweep system we call a sweep box. That's one of the strong things I've been out and about promoting. And it's not just used for sweep. We're using it for return balancing out in the field, that you can use it instead of using 1 or 2 tones to generate on your return to sweep or on your return to balance as you're upgrading your network, and you go to set up your return. Instead of having somebody sitting at the amplifier or the node waiting for the technician out in the field to transmit the 2 tones and make a measurement and balance the return, we're using the sweep system where you can leave the sweep box at the node, inject it there, and then one tech can go out in the field and balance out the return, not just with 2 tones, but with the 400 sweep tones. So you get a full gauntlet of the sweep of the spectrum that you're balancing with. And it's real time. So as you're making your adjustments at the amp, 2 or 3 amps out in the field, Sweetbox is sending you back the data, and it's as you make an adjustment, it's instantaneous. So it's basically return sweep, but using it to balance.
So basically, if anyone has any complaints, you know who to talk to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That. And then the other one is the CX310. That's our field install meter. We have a new model that's coming out. It's not a new model. It's an enhanced version of it. And we're now looking at an FFT for the return spectrum. So it's instantaneous traces. You can see any impulse noises. It's a beautiful thing. It works really good. So we're starting to, hasn't been really, I don't know if I should have said it because it hasn't been introduced or put out yet, but I am showing it to customers as I'm going out. Get with me.
Okay, so now one last question. I'm just going to follow up. From all of the articles that are on our website and or live streams on our YouTube channel, which one's your favorite?
Well, obviously, all of your tech things that you do when you talk to different people. I did watch the last one you did with Ron on QAM analysis.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if any of your meters currently do constellation displays now, or if that's...
Oh, yeah. We do constellation displays. And one of the things that, on all of them, but on the 380C, we also give you the group delay, frequency response, and all that. You can bring that all up on a graph. So I think that was one of the comments that came up, that it would sure be nice to be able to see, the group delay and the frequency response and the taps. We have that. And
maybe we should do a live stream on that, Mike.
Maybe we should.
Well, yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate your answering those very important questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you are the customer at this point, right? Yeah. You were the one making comments.
Correct.
And that's surprising because I've never heard of you making any comments.
She does occasionally.
No, hey, I appreciate you having me on. It was fun. This was fun.
Yes.
I don't know if this is going to be part of the kit or the skit, but it's fun.
Well, it's not really a skit since none of it was actually pre-planned.
Yeah.
So
I would like to redo that beginning that I did because I had it. I thought about it last night as I was falling asleep, and I was thinking, you always hear a first-time caller,
Oh, it's fine. Don't worry. Brady.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. It's now long-time watcher, first-time visitor.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Brady flubs all the time.
Yeah.
It's no big deal.
But I thought
it's part of being human.
It's part of it being natural. So that's all good.
Yeah.